I recently did a video with Mr. Porter, and it didn't go to plan at all. But not in a bad way, it just turned out to be something completely different from what I expected. We ended up talking about watches as a whole. I was supposed to talk about the watches that I'd chosen. Basically, the conversation that we ended up having just seemed so much more interesting than what I was going to talk about. But I do still feel like I should talk about the watches. I should talk about why I chose the watches that I showed. Let's just talk about it. Welcome back to Bark and Jack. I am Adrian, and usually I drink coffee, talk watches, but that's not what's happening today. I'm drinking tea. I'm drinking tea and talking about watches. Basically, the plan was for that video was I was going to have a little vloggy intro. Today we are in London, and then it was going to cut to me talking hands about the watches that I'd chosen, and then we're going to cut to an interview section, maybe about 30 seconds of me talking with someone from Mr. Porter about what Mr. Porter is. Naturally, the interview section was really quite formal.
And yeah, you're right. We're proud to offer all of that.
Because we're talking about a business. This was a paid for video, so it was an advert as such. We got that part done with Chris, the senior watch editor for Mr. Porter, but I left the cameras rolling. I've tried to be a bit diverse.
Yeah, as well. It's quite a range.
What happened after the interview was the fun part.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the only one for me that sort of sits squarely in your wheelhouse.
And you can tell that by the body language change. I hadn't left the microphones rolling, and you can see at the start of the video, I look down and I press record.
I didn't pay you for Roger Dubuis fan, and
I decided not to talk about the watches that I'd chosen in that video because I just preferred the conversation. I thought the conversation that we ended up having, it was a genuinely organic conversation between two people who like watches. And I thought that was quite a fun thing to talk about. But I do have things that I want to talk about with the watches. And so I guess I should do this follow-up video. The first watch that we saw in that video was a Roger Dubuis Excalibur Skeleton. Now, straight away, this isn't my normal kind of watch. Roger Dubuis isn't a brand that I naturally gravitate to, but a lot of companies try to do things differently, try to bend the rules or try to stand out and do things differently just for the sake of doing them differently, and they're quite often badly executed. This feels different. This feels like they're trying to stand out, but it is well executed. The finishing is really very, very good. The build quality, what you'd expect, it's a £60,000 watch. The build quality is superb. For a large watch, it wears actually very well, but it's the little details that kind of just makes all of this stuff stand out. The movement is highly skeletonized. You can see right through this thing because it's got sapphire both on the front and back. The point about skeletonization is to highlight the movement, is to highlight what is actually happening inside the watch. And I really like how they've gone the step further and flipped around that micro rotor. So the micro rotor is on the front of the dial. So although this watch isn't my kind of watch, it really stood out as this thing is trying to be different. It is different, and it's done really very, very well. But also, when I'm just given a massive collection of watches to play with, I do like to explore the weird, the slightly different, even if it's not my cup of tea, literally. It's fun to explore them and actually get hands-on with these watches. The next watch, however, I absolutely adore. This is the Vacheron Constantin 56 with the stunning blue dial, and we have this highly polished bracelet. Now, when you see the bracelet on a watch stand, or when you see the bracelets on press photographs or on the website, it looks a bit odd. It looks a bit too flashy, but when it's on the wrist, it does work. It works very well. I don't know how I'd wear this, because for me this would be a kind of everyday dressy style watch, and so I don't feel that bracelet really suits every day. And if it was to be a dress watch, I'd actually prefer to put it on a brown leather strap. So although I do like the bracelets as part of the offering, I'm not sure I would personally wear the bracelet. But for me, it is all about the dial. The dial is absolutely gorgeous. The 56 gets a lot of hate because it's a Vacheron, it's part of the Holy Trinity, but they use a Cartier-based movement. But for me, that's not really a concern. The finishing is still Vacheron, the execution is still Vacheron, and this only costs £11,000, which is a massive chunk of money. But when you're thinking about a watch from the Holy Trinity that looks as stunning as this, I actually think £11,000 is brilliant. And I'll try and do a longer video around the 56 because I'm actually a big fan of the 56 range. But I feel like this is a commercial offering from Vacheron. It's an everyday, very versatile watch. So it kind of makes sense that a large element of the watch is made in a commercial fashion, and that is the movement. I do understand some people's arguments around shunning the 56 range because of the movement. But for me, in the way that I see it, I think this is a superb package for just over 10 grand. I think it's honestly stunning. The next watch is an absolute classic and exactly the same as with the Roger Dubuis. I just wanted to get hands on with this watch. This is a Cartier Santos-Dumont. This is such a truly classic piece. I'm a big fan of Cartier, but the Santos range I think is just something really special, something insanely classy. This is the 33.9mm wide watch, which sounds small, but that's because it's a square case. It's stunningly thin, which I kind of feel a dress watch should be, but it's all the extra little facets of it. It's the textures on the dial, it's that highly polished bezel, it's that little blue jewel on the crown. All these tiny, very subtle little details that really create this watch to be the it is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Now for the final watch, and although this isn't the most expensive watch within this cluster, I do think this is perhaps the most extravagant watch because it's 10 grand and because it's blue. This is an out and out sports watch. You aren't going to be able to dress this up. This isn't going to be a versatile watch that you can wear with many outfits, but at the same time, it's just cool. It's big, it's blue, and I love this tone of blue in contrast with the little details of yellow. This is the IWC Pilot's Chronograph Blue Angels. It's part of a 3-watch collection, but this is for me the one that stands out as the best looking within this little cluster. But it is big and it is chunky. This is 44.5mm wide and 15.7mm deep. This is really quite big, but it looks pretty damn awesome. Guys, those are the details on the watches that I chose for that Mr. Porter video. I am glad that it kind of worked out that way, that we kind of had this idea of this formal chat, but it ended up being this very informal chat. I am glad that these videos turned out differently. I had fun having that chat. If you haven't seen that video, I'll put a link in the description down below. If you're interested in any of these watches, there will be affiliated links in the description down there as well. If you want to check them out, click on the link and it will take you straight through Mr. Porter. If you just want to have an explore of Mr. Porter's offering, then again, there'll be a link down below that will take you over to the watches part of Mr. Porter. If you have any questions or comments about these watches, drop them in the comment section down below. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. If you like the style of this video, hit the subscribe button down there and that little bell icon so you get notifications when I drop a new video. If you're on Instagram, give me a follow at Bark and Jack, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.